Art Project. Written by Bonkichi. Read by Arashi. You have 3 weeks to complete the art project. Now, please get into groups. The teacher trailed off before going back to doing stuff on his computer. Sai Hara-chan! Kokichi sang out to the blue-haired boy, clinging to his arm. Be my partner, pretty please, he begged, giving Shuichi a pleading look. Pretty please with a cherry on top, he continued to ask after Shuichi shook his head. After a few minutes of listening to Kokichi begging Shuichi to be his partner, the taller one gave up, giving in. Fine, he sighed, lowering his head. Just let go of my arm, please. Kokichi rolled his eyes, but let go, sitting back in his chair. Whatever. Are we going to do it at your place or mine? He asked, propping his elbows on the table, folding his hands together. Shuichi thought for a moment. Not too big a fan of doing stuff at his house, but he's never been to Kokichi's house either. Whatever you prefer. I don't mind. He smiled softly, a bit nervous. Kokichi smirked at Shuichi's hesitation, a look of mischief in his eyes. Let's do it at my place, then. I have all sorts of cool things we can use. Shuichi nodded slowly, biting his lip, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. If you're okay with that, then sure, your place it is. He took a deep breath to calm his nerves a bit. When should I, come over for it? He asked, trying not to embarrass himself. After school is fine. I have plans later tonight, though, so... he said, as he looked at his nails, kicking his feet back and forth under the table. Sure, after school today sounds good to me, Shuichi agreed, though he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Kokichi was always unpredictable, and Shuichi wasn't sure what to expect from or during their collaboration later on. The rest of the school day passed in a blur, and soon enough, Shuichi found himself standing in front of Kokichi's apartment. He was sort of expecting the liar to live in some sort of mansion, but didn't say anything about that. He raised his hand to knock, but just as he touched the door, it swung open, Kokichi standing there with a wide smile. Sai Hara-chan! Welcome to my humble abode, he said, as he held the door open for the detective in training. Shuichi stepped inside, looking around at the decor. He wasn't surprised that he used brighter, neon colors and a whole lot of checkered stuff, though it did look cozy inside. You have a lot of interesting things here, he said nervously, trying not to sound rude or anything. He just didn't know how else to describe it. Yuppers, Kokichi said, beaming with pride as he sucked on a lollipop. I stole all of it, of course. He smirked, taking Shuichi's hand to show him his room. Oma-kun, he sighed, a bit disappointed by what the other boy had said. He could just hope it was another lie of his. Kokichi's room had posters and figures scattered around, a computer set up over by the corner next to the window, a wall behind it for keychains and pins, completely filled out with colorful chains and pins. Kokichi sat down in the middle of the floor, on top of a checkered rug, before gesturing for Shuichi to come join him. All right, partner, let's see. What shall we do first? Shuichi sat down across from the liar, a bit overwhelmed by his energy. Well, we should start by choosing a theme, shouldn't we? What do you think we should do? The purple-haired boy tapped his chin thoughtfully, taking a good moment to think. Let's see. How about something like a sculpture, made with unusual materials? Shuichi considered it, nodding his head slowly. Maybe. What kind of materials were you thinking? Kokichi's eyes sparkled with excitement. Oh, I've got a ton of stuff we could use. He smirked. Shuichi couldn't help but think to himself, "That's not a surprise." The purple-haired boy stood up, going over to his desk and going through the drawers. "We've got bottle caps, old toys, some fabric, ooh, maybe some electrical parts too. There's more stuff in the other room too. We could make something super unique." Shuichi found himself smiling at that, finding it a bit funny Kokichi just kept stuff like that in his room. Though he didn't find it that surprising. Kokichi definitely came off as the type of guy to do that. "All right, a sculpture with random things it is." He couldn't stop the small giggle leaving his mouth. He stood up, walking over to where the shorter boy stood, and looked at a couple of the things he had in the drawers. They spent the next few hours sorting out the items on the floor, going through the collection of items Kokichi had, selecting items they thought would work for the project. As they sorted through it, Shuichi found himself relaxing, enjoying the creative process and Kokichi's constant stream of chatter. They took a few of the boxes from the other room Kokichi had mentioned earlier, going through those as well. By the time they wrapped up for the night, they had a pretty solid plan in place and a ton of materials for the project. Shuichi stood up, stretching his arms above his head. "That was funner than I thought it'd be," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. Kokichi grinned up at him. "See? I told you it'd be fun. And we're gonna make the best sculpture ever." Shuichi chuckled, feeling a sense of camaraderie he hadn't expected. "Yeah, we will. See you tomorrow, then?" "Duh!" The shorter rolled his eyes as he stood up as well, his arms crossed over his chest. "Same time?" he asked, walking with the taller one to the door. "Sure. See you tomorrow, Oma-kun." Shuichi smiled, waving to Kokichi as he left down the hall. As he made his way home, Shuichi looked forward to working with Kokichi again tomorrow. The next day after school, Shuichi went right to Kokichi's house after making a small stop at his own house. This time, Shuichi felt a bit more confident. When he arrived, Kokichi greeted him with a bright smile, the same enthusiasm as usual. They quickly made their way to Kokichi's room. As they sorted through the electronic collection of materials, Shuichi found himself laughing at Kokichi's stream of jokes and stories. Despite Kokichi's often mischievous nature, Shuichi realized that he was having a good time and enjoying Kokichi's company for once. "Hey, Seihara-chan, check this out," Kokichi said, holding up an old robot dog. "We can use this as the base for our sculpture." Shuichi examined the toy and nodded. "That's a great idea, Oma-kun. I think it'll work perfectly." They spent the next hours assembling their sculpture, meticulously placing each piece in just the right spot. Kokichi's creativity and Shuichi's attention to detail made them a surprisingly effective team. As they worked, Shuichi found himself opening up more to the shorter boy, sharing a few stories from his own life, and even laughing at some of Kokichi's more outlandish antics. It was a side of himself that he didn't show to others often, and was surprised at how natural it felt to be around Kokichi after a while. By the time they finished for the day, their sculpture was starting to take shape. It was a chaotic, colorful masterpiece, with pieces of toys, electronic parts, and some other small bits of junk to make a robotic dog, or at least a design for it. It was still a work in project, but it was going along pretty well so far. Shuichi couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as he looked at their creation. It was a bit messy, but he was proud of it. "We're really making something special," the blue-haired boy said, admiring their work. Kokichi grinned, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "Of course we are. We're the dream team, Seihara-chan. Just wait till everyone sees it." He giggled, holding the dog sculpture up. Shuichi smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest at Kokichi's words. "Yeah, I think we'll get a high score on it. We're definitely going to win." Kokichi laughed, poking Shuichi with the creature they had created. As they cleaned up their mess, putting away the remaining pieces that they hadn't used tonight, Kokichi continued to tell jokes and stories to Shuichi. As they left Kokichi's house that evening, Shuichi felt a sense of accomplishment and a newfound respect for his work partner. He realized that he was looking forward to seeing Kokichi again. The next week flew by as they continued working on their project every day after school. With each session, their sculpture grew more intricate and impressive. They experimented with different configurations, incorporating new elements that added depth and texture to their creation. Finally, the day came when they had to present the project to the class. Shuichi felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as they carefully transported their sculpture to the school. Kokichi, on the other hand, seemed completely unfazed, his usual playful demeanor intact. When it was their turn to present, Kokichi took the lead, explaining their concept and the materials they used with his usual flair. Shuichi followed up with a more detailed description of their process, highlighting the teamwork and creativity that had gone into the project. The class was captivated, and a few annoyed, Mew and Kaito, by their presentation. Even the teacher looked impressed. When they finished, there was a moment of silence before a couple of students clapped. Shuichi couldn't help but feel a swell of pride as he glanced at Kokichi, who was grinning from ear to ear. He could just hope that they got a good grade on it at least. After class, as they were packing up their sculpture, Kokichi turned to Shuichi with a mischievous glint in his eyes. "So, Sayada-chan, what do you say we celebrate our wonderful success? My treat." Shuichi smiled, a bit surprised by the sudden offer from Kokichi. Sure. That doesn't sound too bad."